Hello people, Linker here today with the Order of Origin campaign tier list. And in this game, Order of Origin, there's a lot of important decisions to make. You have trees, you have resource management, you have summons and so much more. And things can go wrong. And while the game's meant for fun and all heroes have some sort of combos and utility, certain heroes will be much easier to use in campaign than others. So today we're gonna rank them in a tier list, explaining each hero's strength and weaknesses, combos. But a quick favor, I'm getting back to YouTube after quite a while, so if you can, please like, comment, subscribe, check out the links in the description and much more. For now, thank you and let's get to it. Alright, feel free to use the timestamps in the description to navigate through this video. What I'm gonna do is gonna first explain what the tiers mean, then go over the heroes faction by faction, explaining the picks. I think hearing that can really help you out, so I'd recommend you watch all the way through. But starting with the tiers. SS is going to be the most broken heroes in the game. There's 3 heroes that just change how the entire battle works entirely, whether they exist or not on the field. Every hero in this tier is completely broken. They're not all eternal or abyss, it might surprise you. So for S, these are heroes that scale well, and players will probably build their teams around these heroes. They either dominate a specific area of the battlefield or offer very good kind of utility or damage, something that's hard to replace by other heroes and hard to outclass entirely. Now for A and B, even this early into the game in the meta, we know most heroes are balanced around a specific power level. If you look at your hero stats, one thing I see, the more people thinking the A or B tier is weak, that's just wrong. These are your campaign progress, bread and butter. Many times the difference between passing a stage or getting stuck is knowing what synergies enable the A and B tier heroes. So better know them safe than sorry. And with the difference gonna be that heroes in the A tier are easier to play in my opinion. Now, C and F tier is gonna be the bottom 10 heroes in the game. And while these heroes can work well, in higher power deficit settings, the situation where they shine compared to others are relatively rare. Look, they're still playable, but more often than not, you'll have a higher tier hero that's just better at doing what they do on your arsenal. So pay attention before investing into these heroes and better know what you're doing if you want to progress in campaign. But as you know, game's meant for fun, so you do you and have fun. I'm out here to help you progress in campaign and not get stuck if that's what you like. Now onto the tiers, we're gonna start with Nature's Echo and we're gonna start with Berk. Berk, an early game hero that you get very fast and he's actually pretty strong. So what he does, obviously he has the AoE heals and the ultimate, he has the target heals and the abilities. As pretty strong hero overall. Not a one hero do it all, so you can just spec all your stats into this guy because he has no damage, no CC, nothing like that. Just keeps your tanks alive. So assuming you have tanks and assuming you have DPS, this guy can be very useful, and he actually scales well into the late game, all the way from when you first get him in chapter 1 or 2 or whenever it is. So Berk, an A tier here for me, very strong upper A. No specific order in the tiers, obviously, you're just gonna go by factions, but a very strong hero for you to keep an eye for and a good hero to start investing in early once you get him. Next up, Gerald, and some people in Discord might be mad about this, but Gerald, he's a strong hero, has AoE damage, very nice, but conditional stun. So it depends on whether your team is kind of oriented around the magical enemies or the physical enemies that you fight, and the crystal that he summons dies relatively fast, so he can offer a lot of utility, but not one of those top 3 kind of tier heroes. What he can do is more situational, and because of this, I think he fits very well into the B tier, which means that if you're fighting these physical enemies, Gerald can be insane. He can do a lot of damage, he can do the dazes, these are long duration, does them in a little aura, so really strong. But in those situations where you're fighting the mana-oriented teams and the magical-oriented teams, and it doesn't really fit, then he just doesn't really fit. So not always easily slottable, but a strong hero nonetheless. Keep your eyes open for Gerald. Next up is gonna be Savannah. Now, Savannah is another A tier hero for me, pretty easy. I think Nature's Echo is really strong. A lot of heroes are gonna go in the A tier, I think, for Nature. What's strong about Savannah is one ability and one ability alone. It's not the damage, it's not the bleed. Some of you notice it's the attack speed. She jumps into a specific area of the field and just does this AoE kind of attack speed buff. And this is especially useful if you want attack speed, if you want mana regeneration. If you have one carry that needs the extra speed, she can be the difference. And this scales very well. Even if you're going to these power deficits where you're fighting enemies that are significantly stronger, you'll always need to enable your carry no matter what. So Savannah, one of these heroes that doesn't need much investment to always do her trick, which is very strong and enables heroes at all kinds of deficits all around the game. And Corina, oh my goodness, this is the sad story. Amazing tree, by the way, some of you don't know. I take into account the tree bonuses here. She gets speed from the tree, but sadly just outclassed in her role very often. She does the assassin thing, so she does like assassin damage, and she summons those little statues that fight for her. And they're strong, don't get me wrong. The issue is that there's other heroes that do what she does better. And while she can be used, for example, in all Wilder teams or in specific teams where you got all these assassins that go up and she kind of provides the defense, these teams are currently not very strong in the meta from what we see, from the replays that we see currently in those later stages, especially once you pass up chapter 20. Corina becomes more rare at the moment. So I'm gonna currently place her in C, but I'll keep an eye for her and see if she improves later. Alright, on to Irene. I think great hero, really strong. And the thing is, the Link, sometimes other heroes do it better. Some people want to place her in the C tier because her Hurricane doesn't do much damage. I utterly reject that. I think that when you link certain heroes together, you can burst through specific teams. But keyword here is specific. If you're linking a tank and another kind of tanky hero, she's not going to do that much. She's not going to bring your team to the next level. But if you can somehow get her to link like a weak backline and somehow kind of burst him down with an assassin, then she can be super useful, and the link makes her super valuable alongside some of her abilities. So for me, this kind of upper B tier where she can crucial, like sometimes be what carries you through a certain field, but not always. So it's kind of situational. Now for Don, one word, just the CC. The aura fear that he does is incredible, and he provides damage. So it's just kind of two roles, and you can do both. Say you kind of invest in Dawn, but not all the way, and you need somebody to just kind of invade the backline and fear, he works in that way. If you want to just burst down some assassin and kill them, you can work with that too. So Dawn, I think, is very flexible, and that's what cuts him into the A tier. Not necessarily because in every fight he's going to be better than these guys, but because he's easier to work with. He has multiple roles, and they all go into every fight, whether you're fighting tanks, whether you're fighting assassins, whether you're fighting mages. The fear is almost always useful to just kind of disassemble your enemy team into disarray and can take advantage from there. And anything that does CC and plays with positions is very strong in the current meta. And speaking of things that are strong in the current meta, Liliana, amazing. The ult, the sleep, the banish, where she completely banishes a certain enemy and it goes negative. I don't know why the effect is like that, but just incredibly powerful. She impacts the whole field. Like every time she ults, everybody on the enemy team just vanishes, no matter where they are, no matter what they do. Very little things have immunity to control, which is a strong ability. But even if your enemy has to happen, like one of them, like imagine she ults once every 10 seconds, which is like pretty slow for Irene. Many of these comps are gonna get some sort of speed up and mana regen. She can take control of the enemy field and just keep them asleep for like so long, especially once you level down the ultimate to the level where the sleep duration is longer. She's just insane. There's little that can fight this for me. I think she single-handedly makes this faction so much stronger, and she's gonna be one of those non-eternal, non-abyss heroes that's gonna cut it all the way up to SS. And I know some people are gonna say, oh, Link, that's a hot take. There's no way she's better than Abyss or Eternal. But just look at what her ability does. She can just stun lock entire teams in amazing ways. We see her already used in incredible deficits and just carrying teams all together, even at low investments. So Liliana, a very good hero to invest in. One of the top 3 in the game for me. And next up, and some heroes don't get this hero, Antois. What's nice about Antois, yes, the taunt is a little bit on the knock-up, the CC, but what's really nice about Antois is the scaling. So not a lot of people do this thing where you go to a hero and actually open up their stats and look what's going on. I do it all the time. That's how I came up with this tier list. But what's nice about this guy is his stats. It's gonna be the stats. I can't cut it any other way. His stats are just so high. He gets a lot of defense. The stat scales with the shield, and he has the reflection of damage. Just makes him one of the strongest tanks in the game. And there's currently not that many tanks that work. There's like 3, maybe 4 in the very top tiers. And this guy, just with very high scaling, with the taunt, with the CC, with everything, just cuts it into being a very good tank with a very strong faction. So he's gonna be on the A tier. Great stuff. Also looks really badass. I like that design. Speaking of heroes that have a beard but did not go so well, next up we're gonna go over the Silver Empire. And first on the Silver Empire is Horus. Horus, the old scaling damage just doesn't cut it. So many other mages do so much better. You have Isabella, you have all these that we're gonna talk about in just a bit, but for now, Horus is gonna be on the C tier. The crit buffs, they're decent, but with heroes like Savannah on the field, very rarely do you say, alright, I need the crit buffs, you can just retry to get a better crit. So unless consistency is super big for you and somehow you're building the Silver Empire comp that you really like, more often than not, Horus is not going to be the best hero for you to try. Constantine, another pretty sad story. So Constantine, what's said about him? Scaling is just bad. Not much CC. CC is what's strong in the meta right now. And scaling is just not that good. He has AoE 500% like the arrow barrage, and it's not even on the same enemy, so you aren't getting a kill. And in burst DPS meta like we have right now, where you CC and burst DPS down, just not that good to be firing these barrages all around the field. Open to raising this rank in the future, but Constantine, as I see him right now, is gonna find a sad slot in the F tier because we currently do not have enough evidence to justify that you really need him as a carry. One hero that could make the difference, and I'm gonna put in B tier, and for me it's higher B tier, Stephanie. Stephanie's really strong. Like what she does, she brings the mana to other heroes, and she does the stuns, a little bit of buffs and debuffs, very strong stuff. For me, I think Stephanie is a strong hero. If you want to enable your team, many of these mono carry or duo carry comps really need somebody to do CC and buffing, especially mana regen, which is especially powerful when you put it together, and then you can kind of spam ults on heroes like Liliana and other very strong heroes. So Stephanie is going to be a strong B tier hero. Doesn't fit on every team because not every team is mana regen kind of oriented. Not every team is kind of needs their one hero stun. Obviously much lower stun than something like Liliana, but pretty flexible hero, can fit. I mean, you're never completely sad that you put her in your team, but she finds it hard to completely excel. Nonetheless, a strong hero that I think good to keep your eyes open wide for. And Leon is gonna go in B, and there's gonna be a lot of questions about this one because no matter what tier I put Leon in, everybody's gonna be mad. Reason is Leon has very high scaling, but he's super clunky. Just the ult doesn't work like it should right now. All the blades aren't working the way they should. So, but he's also part of the most broken tree in the game, where you can give him extra attack speed, and then he attacks really fast, and the arrows are kind of fast, but the arrows aren't affected by the attack speed. So just kind of. He's an assassin, but it still kind of feels clunky. He has a lot of things that would make you say, look, maybe he's A tier, but the clunkiness just pushes him down. So for me, he's gonna be mid B tier kind of hero. He's a carry. He has a lot of competition in the carry role, but he can do what he does fairly well. So I'm gonna put him in the B tier for now. I'm open to changing this one also in the future, relatively early, but for now, I think you aren't too sorry if you invest in him because he can carry. So if you wanna have him as your second carry, as your third carry, Darius works great. But that's pretty much that. And Teresa. Teresa, she's another tricky one because she doesn't do that much, but then again, what she does, like the whole DR, where she get the damage reduction and the little aura, doesn't take a lot of scaling. So what's special about Teresa, you don't have to invest that much into her. She gets like the little shield and the DRs, and they're just kind of there, and she doesn't need to do that much damage. So she's not very hungry for resources, and she can work. So the place she works best, in my experience, is if you're building a Silver Empire team. There she can be kind of a tank, but not really a tank kind of, but she's flexible. She can go in all around places. She can do all kinds of things, and she's also a tank, which are highly needed at the moment. So for me, she's gonna be a B tier. Pretty strong hero, despite her abilities on the face of it not doing that much, just the flexibility where you don't have to invest much, and she will always be kind of a tanky hero and kind of a buffing hero. Makes her more flexible and makes her find a pretty good slot in the B tier. Unlike Horus, who's the tank that's gonna find himself in the C tier. Oh my goodness, there's not gonna be many tanks in the lower two tiers. There's gonna be 2, maybe 3 tanks. The issue with Horus is again the stats. A lot of these heroes are gonna look good in the face of them, where this guy does the taunt, does the shield, looks really good, but doesn't bring enough in tandem with the stats, because even though he looks really tanky, when you actually bring him onto the field in taunt, he dies pretty fast despite the shield. Like, you compare it to a hero like Ant, where the shield is actually smaller, but the Ant base stats are higher. On top of that, he gets the reflect, on top of that, he gets the CC, so Douglas is gonna have a little bit of a difficulty carving a niche. He can work, especially if you don't have a tank, then he can situationally rise way up, because he's decent, but there's just other things out there that you'll find yourself using commonly. Isabella does the weather thing where she does ice all around the place, has decent damage, has decent CC, so it could be the thing that just cuts you up if you can not kill the enemy but you can get them to low HP. She kind of freezes them, then you take control, so she does damage, she does control. As you know, everything that does control in this meta is going to be high up there, especially if it's team-wide, so Isabella going all the way up to A. Last Silver Empire hero to rank, Arthur. And this is something a lot of people have been talking to me about. I didn't believe what I'm about to say at first, but Arthur is incredibly strong. I thought this is biased because everybody gets Arthur, and everybody kind of invests in Arthur because he has damage. I used to think, it's not that strong, it's just like he does good damage kind of, but no, when you look up Arthur's scaling, he scales so good with levels. So what's good about Arthur is that he's doing AoE DPS around a specific area of the field, he moves towards the most clustered area of heroes, and he does just insane amounts of damage. Just the sheer damage numbers are what's broken about this guy, where he spends for 5 seconds damaging 2, 3, sometimes 4, or even 5 enemies depending on your team. He could be incredibly strong, especially with some of the CC kind of displacement oriented heroes we're gonna see in the top 3 tiers. Arthur finds his way all the way up to S. Another non-abyss, non-eternal hero that finds his way to the top 2 tiers. Very strong to get him early. I recommend you invest in him unless they release some hero that out DPSs this guy in the future. An incredibly strong hero for me that can dominate an AoE whole section of the battle. Next up, Bella, and Bella is one that I really thought a lot about. Bella ignites, has the stun, so she has long-term damage both in the ability and in the ult, where she kind of does DPS over time, and she has the burst DPS obviously, where she like does the big flamethrower kind of thing alongside some CC, so she's a strong hero. Pretty strong. Not that broken, because in every single category she is outclassed by some other hero. In terms of like raw burst DPS, there's other heroes that do better. In terms of long-term DPS, heroes like Isabella do better. In terms of stun, also Isabella does better. But she's not as bad as some of the other heroes. Like she's not in those bottom 2 tiers. I think Bella belongs pretty safely in the B tier, and the reason that is because she's always like brings some sort of value into the team, like stun, like DPS, like something. And if you don't have any spare hero that can fulfill that role, if you need extra damage, if you need something like that, Bella got you. She is rarely the best in a role, but she's never terrible. She's always like the 2nd or 3rd or 4th best you have on your team, so she's decently good in like many formations as the 5th or 6th hero that you slot, and just that sheer flexibility brings her value to have in your arsenal and your comp, even somewhat invested. This hero, I always call her Anaconda. She's Anaconda, I think is the name. I like her. She does the executes, which are very strong in my book, because she has high scaling executes, so very strong in that term, but she's super situational. Because she's fragile, she goes to the enemy side of the team, does her thing, and tries to execute, and she's fragile there. She can just die, especially the higher deficit, she can just get picked off. But if you somehow arrange for her to survive, which is exactly why these heroes in the SS tier that's gonna do a lot of CC are very strong, it's because they kind of give you protection and CC, which enables these other heroes that are crucial. Like, these heroes need the high tier heroes to enable them, but if they are enabled, they can do a lot, and Anaconda is one of these heroes most certainly. So for me, she's gonna be a B tier. Situational, but can be really good. Depends if you're able to enable her, even in these high deficits, is what's gonna make or break a good Anaconda player. Pluto, man, I'm biased. I would love to put him higher. Personally, one of my favorite heroes in terms of the design, but sadly he's just B. Well, he does give mana, which is very strong, makes you ult very fast with heroes like Stephanie, for example. Well, it's like the ult doesn't do enough. Just the tentacles and slight knockback, that doesn't cut it when you have other heroes like all the heroes in the A tier. Look at all these heroes. Most of them have some sort of, like, anything in their ultimate that give you the extra oomph, something that's stronger than that. And sadly, Pluto doesn't cut it. Ultimate too weak, the mana regen is strong, the base stats are pretty good, so a hero that's good to know how to use if you need the extra regen. If you're playing these kinds of heroes, you can have a lot of fun with Pluto. Nonetheless, gonna find himself on the B tier. Soda, and Soda's gonna be B tier, and it's only for one reason. Like, his scalings are not that crazy like they look on first sight. He doesn't have that much CC or that much damage. It's the tree, okay? This guy executes, and he has the most access to the most broken tree in the game. Tree gives him 100% attack speed, and that lets him execute very fast. So that cuts him into the B tier. His scalings are lower than someone like Anaconda, but nonetheless, he can do the same thing that she does because of the broken tree. So for me, pretty kind of similar hero. Whichever one you put depends on which hero you have more invested, which kind of hero faction do you want in your team more. It's kind of situational, but still another hero that relies on other heroes to stun so he can survive, super fragile, but does the executes and has something else nice going for him. Now, this guy I think is called Orson. A lot of these remind me of other kind of archetypes or heroes. Orson, the totem is not that strong. He does healing, which can be useful, but because most players have perk, it's not that useful. You don't like, it's rare that you need more than 2 healers in a team, you know? And very rarely is Orson gonna be that the second or third hero that you really need. Totem can be nice to kind of draw aggro, heal a little bit more, but the scalings are not high as you would like them to be for a mainstream hero that finds viability. So very rarely can be used, but not that often, and hence finds itself here. Similar case to Garrick. Garrick has CC, which is nice, but just having CC and even armor break is not enough. Most of these top tier heroes are gonna have strong CC, and if they're tanks, they're gonna have the stats to back it up, and some sort of a taunt and something that's strong enough to maintain, like the shield or the refraction. On this guy, I'm not good enough to kind of scale it up to be a functional tank. So another one of those. Look, if you don't have enough tanks, he can cut it. He's upper C tier. He can kind of fit in B if you need an extra tank, but sadly currently outclassed by other heroes in his main role. Now, Phineas. Phineas, for me, is going to be lower B tier. Thing with Phineas is he's pretty strong with the little link that he does, where he does the debuffs and everything. That's pretty good. There's other heroes that do it decently well. Like if you look at him compared to a hero like Irene, can you really place him higher than Irene? For me, not the case. Usually you want damage over the debuffs. Debuffs are good, but when enemies are much stronger than you, debuffs are rarely what's going to cut it on their own. Has access to a good tree, so can do a lot of things. If you need his kind of CC and debuffs kind of orientation, he can do it, it can give it, but rarely like your first choice. So it's lower B tier for me when you're talking about Phineas, a hero that has some potential, but you gotta know how you want to use him if you want to use him. And lastly, this guy, oh my god, I forget the name. I think it's Ormonger, something like that. He's B tier, so what he does, he has the spears, he enhances his own speed, then he loses HP to attack faster with the spears. He's a carry. Scaling is similar to like some other carry like Dawn, but sadly doesn't have CC, which is just such a big factor. Like every second of CC in this game, especially if it's a group CC, it's something that's going to give you an advantage over multiple heroes. So if you can CC, like your leverage over the other team is just insane. Like each hero can keep like the whole enemy team stunned. And sadly, he doesn't have these kind of features. He has just damage, and just damage is good. Gets you all the way up to the B tier, but not much further up than that. To cut it up there, he either needs like a full CC team that will really enable him, or some other team that buffs him a lot. Like let's say you just build a full factional team. In this situation, this is gonna excel and really justify up that placement. Alright, now we have the Astral City, the last of the free-to-play kind of factions. We're gonna start with Wanda, which for me, I think is, it's a pretty good start because for me, she's the strongest Astral City hero currently in the game. And she's gonna go all the way up to A tier. Now let me explain why Wanda is A tier. Wanda is A tier because of her ult. The ult, like there's other heroes which we will talk about in a second, do a similar thing a little bit better. It groups up enemies, and grouping enemies for AoE is just incredibly strong. You have so many heroes that do good AoE damage. If we talk about somebody like Belle, if we talk about somebody like Arthur, if we talk about someone like Savannah, if we talk about Dawn, if we talk, like there's so many heroes that do good AoE damage. They just need somebody to group up the enemies. And movement, it's really strong in the current meta. So Wanda has the ultimate, groups up enemies, the strongest Astral City in my opinion right now at the moment, hands down. Very powerful. There's one hero that kind of does what she does better, but she has a stronger pull faster, so a very strong hero you never regret pulling. And even if you have that other hero, you can actually use them both, because if you have a lot of AoE going down from sides like profession combinations, stuff like that, having multiple groupers can actually pay off. Brooker, F tier, just tank but has nothing. Blind is a bad CC, doesn't do that much, not that much high scaling, so yeah, that's that. Judith, C tier, which saddens me because she's snipers, she goes far, so she's supposed to be the girl that solves the assassin issue. The assassin issue being that if you go to the backline, you gotta have a lot of CC going on, because if you're this kind of a glass cannon kind of tune, you dive all the way in like Anaconda. If you don't have CC, the enemy team's just gonna eat you alive, especially in high deficits. Just gonna all like kind of slap you around and then you die before you manage to ult. And Judith was supposed to be the hero that solved this problem. You may ask me, okay, Linker, then why choose not look like B tier, A tier, S tier? Bad scaling, bad faction, relies on damage, needs faction for damage. Just meta doesn't work for her right now. If there was a lot of Astral City good heroes, she might find herself in a kind of a slot, but sadly Astral City is not that high, so she can't like carry you through multiple enemies. She kind of good on like one enemy, but she's never that good where you want her in a specific team just to build around her. In teams that aren't built for her, there's other heroes that do kind of what she does. You can get away with Anaconda in most of these situations where you use Judith. So situationally, could be useful if you snipe a specific enemy or if you're playing Astral City. Comms for some reason, sadly not the strongest faction at the moment. Would love to see it get a buff. But just a hero that got the bad hand of the meta, sadly, despite pretty good design. Alright, now let's talk about Gil. I got some requests from Discord or chat and stuff like armor and magic. We'll talk about all of that in a second. But Gil, okay? Gil, immunity. Also a very strong Astral City hero. These are gonna be like the top Astral City heroes. Like as we go later, you're gonna find more of them go down the line. Immunity and focus is strong. He can tank, one of those effective tanks. Even if he's not playing Astral City, he can tank just with the immunity. He scales up to 8 seconds. 8 seconds in high deficits is a lot. Like a lot of players play early game, they say, okay, he gets 2 seconds immunity, why is he even good? In the late game, 8 seconds when you get bursted down in high deficits is a lot of time, especially if you can hold, like if you place him to hold like 2 or 3 or 4 enemies aggro, that's like a full team CC for like 4 to 6 seconds, depends on how you look at it. So really strong hero, can tank and hold enemies at bay while your AoE heroes kind of blast at them. I like Gil. I think he's good. Now Charles. Charles is gonna go around and help another hero. Charles is that hero that goes around your best friend and helps you out. He's your wingman. He's a nice guy. He's A tier. Because he can work, you can place him, you can work with certain heroes, especially kind of melee heroes or attack speed kind of heroes. Really like the healing, as the healing can be a little bit situational, so it doesn't work all the way out the gate. If you want him to heal, you need the whatever he's healing to survive, so he's not all the way out of his own, and enjoy the attack speed, so a little bit situational, but can enable a lot of strong comps. I've seen a lot of people telling me to place him on C tier. No way. Charles can actually be really, really strong enabling the right kind of compositions. Like imagine Charles on somebody like Arthur, right, where he kind of goes behind and you have somebody that CCs. He makes Arthur attack faster, he heals him up, so Arthur gets that little bit of extra tankiness, and he can really go to town. So a very, very strong hero that a lot of people are overlooking. And Hort, yeah, also F tier, might be the lowest F tier. Just doesn't bring anything special. Silence is not that special, and damage scaling is not that good. That's that. That is that. Very sad. Yo, this guy, electricity guy, I absolutely like him. B tier, gives mana, not enough damage, but gives some mana regen. So he's like your early game kind of hero that works in the late game. Kind of situational, because in the meta right now, Astral City heroes are not that good as DPS, find some competition, but DPS alongside mana regen, not that bad of a niche, you know, it can work situationally, so absolutely like the guy. Burdock is gonna go to C tier. Only reason he's not F tier is that he's in the best tree in the game. All debuffs are not strong enough to give him any kind of a mainstream viable niche. And that's that. Now, here's the part that everybody's been waiting for, the pay-to-play heroes, the rare heroes, the Astral, the Abyss, the Abrams. Let's talk about it. Zeus guy. Alright, this is gonna start off with a hot take. He's B tier. Nope, not A, not S, not SS. He's gonna be B tier. I know he's Eternal. I know there's gonna be some Eternal fanboys in like the comments telling me, no, how did you do? How are you placing an Eternal hero in B tier? Has the Eternal faction bonus? I know he has it, but he does nothing. Like the Thunders are nice, but there's other heroes that do it, and that's that. He relies on you on the fight for going for so long, and the scaling are not high enough for him to justify any kind of a higher placement, especially when you go into higher deficits. The meta is not kind of this kind of a glass cannon that doesn't do like enough AoE damage, you know? You want something better than that. You want bigger AoEs kind of blasting all around, doing higher scalings, and all of his abilities, like some of the abilities are time gated, not enough to cut him anywhere higher. And he can be a good DPS or a side DPS, gives you the Eternal City bonus, but not good enough to cut it any way higher. Now let's talk about Boris. Boris is a great hero. He's gonna be top of A tier. He does a charm. Charm's really good. He does some debuffs and needs some stars to really work, but he does a long-term charm. He does 6-second charm. I think that's the longest in the game. We're gonna talk about Nubis in a second, okay? But it's like 6 seconds of charm with his ultimate, which is really, really good. Like, he gets you to like have another enemy fighting. He does need investment. He doesn't do much outside of the charm. He has some debuffs, not that big of damage, some damage, kind of glass cannon in terms of stats, so it can work. Preferably for me, I like that my charmer can really kind of take in some damage and survive it, because like the CC that is charm is so strong that heroes that can charm and live on are like what takes it to cut it really like from top of A tier where he is to S tier, which we'll talk about in a second. Alright, next up, Bryant. Bryant is a great hero, does DPS, is gonna be A tier. Another one of those Eternal heroes, many people say he's SS, he's S. His scalings are not that high, okay? Scalings are decent. They're decent, that's that. He does good damage, okay? I absolutely recognize that, I get it. He has some like kind of, like if you look at his abilities, he has like kind of modification of stats, but not much more than that. Like if you want to tell me that Bryant is higher, take a look at Belle and Bryant, or take a look at Isabella and Bryant, and tell me they're that different. This is what I think a lot of people are just blindly going all the way into these Eternal and Abyss heroes and not completely think about it enough. Bryant is a great hero, but some people give him way too much credit, so keep that in mind. As we move forward, Diana, incredibly strong 1v1. Alright, if this was not campaign, if this was like bosses, I'd say she's SS tier. Does incredible damage, but only 1v1 and not that much CC. So she also finds herself on top of A tier. She can just kind of cap through tanks, just like brute force kind of through tanks, through whatever, and just really kill it. Sadly, no AoE damage puts her away from the S tier for now, but high A tier just because of the scalings and the buff. Now Venus. Venus almost gets it to SS. Resurrection, Linker, Resurrection, doesn't it do it? Nope, too slow. Too slow. Resurrection is an incredibly strong mechanic, but the hero that does healing in SS, we'll talk about in a moment, just does more. Just does more. Resurrecting 1 or 2 heroes can be very strong, but it takes her too much time, and if you can't keep her alive, which is what the heroes in SS really do, she can't do it all on her own. So she's incredibly powerful, okay? She's like almost an SS level, really strong with the healing, with all of what she does, but not enough to cut it to SS, but a really strong hero. Personally, one of my favorites. I wanted to put her there, but 2 other heroes are just slightly better, so she doesn't cut it. Omega. I like Omega. I think he's a good tank in a land with not that many good tanks. I wanted to put him in S, but I end up putting him in A, because other tanks do a little bit more. While his base like stats are incredible, the jump and kind of CC is always nice, and he's also like a tank and an Eternal hero, so he fits in many teams. He's really like the best of the best. Like when you compare it to Antois, for example, Antois, this guy, they're pretty similar level as far as like stats and reflection and everything goes. They can do pretty similar stuff, like the knockback, everything like that. I wish I could put Omega higher because I feel like his flexibility is really high A tier, but sadly one of these heroes, they're just on the top of A tier, and if you really need a tank, Omega is going to be incredible for you. Now, alright, I think this is like the biggest hot take, because all the past tier lists you may have seen, all the people I talk and say, Anubis, she has the charm, she has 800% damage, with the 50% damage that happened 4 times over 4 times for each hound, and she has the hounds that she can kind of stay alive. Alright, I get it, but Nubis, you need to keep her alive. The one issue is when Nubis is fighting multiple enemies, she has a hard time. She needs to proc her 800% damage in a very specific way. She needs to charm right. So Nubis is not SS for me. I think other heroes can impact the whole field, and Nubis just controls a specific part and has some kind of situationality to her. So Nubis for me is gonna be an S tier hero. I can do her higher than that. She's incredibly strong with the control she does, the 1v1 damage with the hounds, the fact that she has this kind of like multiple immunities, which is very strong for one hero, and even the charm is really strong, but just doesn't cut it for SS, which is heroes that dominate the whole field. She's gonna be kind of like Venus, where she wants to find herself an SS tier, but doesn't fit like globally on every single team always. When you need extra control, somebody like Liliana, which is not eternal, can still do a better job at controlling a whole field for prolonged periods of time. Veronica. A lot of you have Veronica because everybody gets Veronica. Veronica's a great hero. She goes berserk. She has magic immunity. She does the damage, has the attack speed, has the buffs. Same kind of issue where she's like only one section of the field, but I think she really dominates it one section of the field. She kind of like Arthur, but she gives self buffs against one hero and ults only against one hero. So better against like Arthur that's better against one hero, where Arthur is more like AoE kind of, but has less protections. So very strong. Upper S tier again, but doesn't cut it to SS because she doesn't do whole field shenanigans. She doesn't have that strong of CC. Next up, Dragon Chick. Dragon Chick, what's strong about Dragon Chick, everybody's overlooking it. She has a magic protection passive. Magic protection passive is insane. Everything else, like the curse, everything like that, doesn't scale that insane, okay? She's kind of average, okay? When you talk about a kid, I know she transforms into a dragon, which is really good, but the magic protection is what really brings her up forward, which gives her a lot of flexibility. Sadly, on her own, she doesn't carry. She's usually like the strongest support to the SS and S tier heroes. She's gonna be high S tier again for me. One of those heroes that is strong, one A tier, sorry. High A tier hero for me, that's one hero that is strong, but you need other strong heroes to make her really strong. Like, she gives you extra protection. She makes the stronger heroes stronger, but on her own, she doesn't like completely win you the field. You need to have the right team, and you need her to be doing stuff with her magic protection, situate her so the dragon breath is very good in the line, and so on and so forth. And now, this guy, Buyers. A lot of you saw Buyers earlier. Anybody that ever fought a good Buyers in power deficit knows exactly where this guy is going. He gives immunity to the whole field, is like all you need to know. He gives like 1 second immunity as you like you burst something down, you do DPS, just gives immunity. Can do it like multiple times through the fight. Has incredible heals. He's also a tank, so he's just like doing everything correctly in the current meta. Has team-wide heals, is a tank, gives the team-wide immunity, which is kind of like the opposite of Team CC, but you get it when you need it. So when you go below 10%, then that's where you get the immunity, then he kind of heals you up. He himself is super tanky, one of the most annoying heroes in the game, and has global field presence, just incredibly strong. If you ever played against this guy, I think he's SS tier pretty easily, all the way up there. Can enable whole teams by his own, completely changes how the fight is fought. Alright, so Explosion Chick. Absolutely love her with the feathers. She's gonna be S tier, low S tier. Strong, alright, strong, does the AoE damage. And very good in terms of kind of team fights where she can like teleport around, blast. She's one of those heroes that really like AoE grouping. So we talked about Wanda, we're gonna talk about another hero very soon. When people are grouped up, she does way more damage. She can be an insane carry. But again, situational, needs that extra bit of help, and doesn't like to face a lot of incoming damage because she's a glass cannon, has all the attack stats in the world, but not that much defense, especially when you compare it to other Abyss heroes. Damage reflection is something some of you know is incredibly strong. This guy's a little bit situational because it doesn't get immunity, just resurrects and does the damage reflection back. It can be just a very strong tank. He's a defensive, if you will. Some of you know what I mean. This guy is a very strong tank. It's very situational where you carry the damage reflection, but can do quite a bit if you get people grouped around him and kind of draws aggro. Strong in that way, so goes in the A tier. Next up, Hook is incredible. DPS, like the scalings are incredible, can do a lot of single target damage, but just single target's not going to be enough, especially when you're not tanky enough on your own always to take it like some of the other tanks in this tier, like Omega, like Buyers, like others. So upper A tier for me is where Abyss is going to stand. And now we're getting to the interesting part of this. Azar. I've included about this guy a lot. What Azar does is it groups enemies. He has a lot of passives that increase his power, but none of them matter. None of them matter. What he does is he groups enemies over time. So like Wanda has the instant pull, he just groups them over time. Now this single-handedly enables like half of the heroes in this list to do their damage. If you have any hero that does AoE damage, Azar is probably going to make them stronger in any kind of situation. If you have a situation like target CC, if you have target damage, he puts the enemy team in disarray, brings the backlines to the forelines and to the front lines, and then you can kind of DPS them, increases your whole team damage, and enemies cannot attack properly when he does his thing. So it's kind of a team-wide CC all that increases your damage and does everything. Azar feeds into almost all teams at the moment as one of the best heroes that there is. Complete SST, one of the strongest, and also one of the most popular Abyss heroes, not for no reasons. Then we have Abram, Nux, and I think Nux and Lucifer. Nux, what people don't know is he has like an ability, not an ult, that does team-wide damage and draws all the health back. So he's stronger the more enemies there are on the field, summons the ghoul to absorb damage. He's actually really tanky on his own. If you look at his stats, I think a pretty good lower S tier hero that can carry your team through a lot of fights altogether. Really incredibly strong. If you look at his passives, as you look at everything that he does, changes how the field and the fight works in a very nice way. Nux is this kind of a carry that can really work out for you and does both tanking and DPSing fairly well. Lucifer, one of those heroes that I contemplated a lot about, has very high scaling where he throws the scythe, where he DPSs in melee. Sadly, when looking at the stats, he's just barely under A tier, barely not S, very strong to it. A hero that can carry on his own, so does a lot of damage just by himself, comes up like the angel of death that it is. If he provided a little bit more CC, can be incredible, goes very well with other heroes like Azar, because, for example, if the enemies are groups, he can throw in the scythe. Very strong, almost in the S tier, but sadly doesn't cut it. And lastly is going to be Abraham. Abraham, pay-to-play hero, Otherworldly, we're gonna talk about that later. Has like decent scaling, not as high as you'd think. The only thing that pushes him up is gonna be the fact that he's from the broken assassin tree that gives him attack speed. So he has like, I don't know, 100% scaling on the ult that scales so many times and he attacks so fast. This makes him carry very well. He does a lot of single target damage. He's like a Veronica, but without any defensive utility. Just all offense, this guy blasts through a single enemy, and whatever's on the field at that point is gonna probably be dead. And with that, first ever Order Origin tier list. I've worked on it quite a bit and researched with all kind of players. Special thank to everybody that helped me, Neyo, Icon, Follow, and everybody that kind of gave me advice. Really appreciate it. I looked through all the replays to make this initial tier list as accurate as possible to help all of you new players know what kind of you're speccing and to have a reference point for you to go on. I'm gonna look into a lot of other mechanics. If you like the game, please like, subscribe. If you like my kind of analysis, really helps me out coming back from YouTube. Check out the links in the description for a lot more that you might like for my channel, like a link to the Reddit, to the Discord, to everything. We'll research this kind of things. And for now, I've been Linker. Peace.